Hello and welcome. I am Amanda Farmer and I am here celebrating another Friday in Strata. We're going out to the Your Strata Property Facebook page and also to my LinkedIn profile. Hello everybody, how have you been enjoying your week in Strata? Lots and lots going on, lots to talk about as always. And a special guest here waiting in the wings with me. I will be bringing him on very soon. Lots of you I know excited to hear from our special guest this Friday. If you're coming on in, and I can see lots of you there, please do drop me a hello in the comments. I would love to know that you're here, that you're raring to go, how your week has been, especially if you're on LinkedIn. We're getting a larger and larger following through LinkedIn, which is exciting. Those who may not have Facebook accounts, you can definitely interact with us by posting a comment on LinkedIn. Now, I have with me for the first time in the same room, my puppy dog, Louie, and he has just decided to start moving around, having a sniff, having a little scratch, wondering why mum has suddenly gone, wow, we're on. He's looking at me going, what are we doing, mum? So he may say hello later. I'm stocked up with treats here to keep him from saying hello a little too loudly and interrupting our Friday Live. But I can see you all there and lots of you coming in and saying hello to me now. Hey, Michael, good afternoon to you. It's good to see you. Hi, Gary from Piermont. Nice to see you. Happy Friday. Hey, Henry, good afternoon to you. Now, yesterday was a busy day for me. If you have been on the page or it's popped up in your feed on Facebook or LinkedIn, I was doing some filming with realestate.com.au. They have asked me to do some Strata basics videos for them. We were talking about what I call the 6 most important things, the 6 must-know things about owning a Strata property. We talked about bylaws. We talked about levies. We talked about meetings. Now that is 3 things, 3 of the 6. If you want to find out what the 6 things are, you can check those out in my free ebook. Rochelle, who is always here helping us out, is going to post a link there in the comments. Check that out and I will definitely let you know when the realestate.com.au interviews, short videos are live on that website and share them with you. They are looking for, realestate.com.au was looking for some information to help purchasers of Strata units, those who are browsing that website, looking to buy their next home or their investment. And very close to our heart here, education, educating people so that they can make the most of their time in Strata, make our job as committee members, as Strata managers, as lawyers, a little bit easier too. I am seeing more and more of you saying hello here. Come on in and give me a hi. I'm seeing Jan. How are you, Jan? From Northern Rivers, New South Wales. I hope you're well. Sean is here too, saying, I hope everyone is well. Nice to see you, Sean. We had a Strata Community Association and Women in Strata high tea on Tuesday morning, celebrating International Women's Day. Kind of turns into International Women's Week with all the events that are on. Let's call it International Women's World. Let's do it, guys. And it was lovely to see lots of you there in person. Many of you who are here on the page chatting with me on a Friday afternoon. I got to catch up with you in person, IRL, as I say, in real life. And it's great to get back into the events, seeing our Strata peeps. I always say we work hard, but we play hard. It's important to build those connections and see those people in a social context who you might be working with day to day. So it was lovely to catch up with so many of you at the high tea. Excuse me. Savia is here saying, hey, good to see you again. Savia coming in from LinkedIn. Brendan is saying hi. There's been lots going on in New South Wales, in particular at the moment in relation to Strata reform. Have you done the surveys? There's a lot of surveys out there. Have your say. We're being told to have our say every second week or so. I understand if there is a little bit of survey fatigue. However, If there is one survey that you do, please make it the survey that is out by Deakin University in conjunction with Strata Community Association. Dr. Nicole Johnston, friend of the Your Strata Property Facebook page, our community, a regular guest on the podcast, on the page, has put together this survey, and it is all about strata insurance, understanding more about the decisions that we're making, the jobs that strata managers are doing when it comes to strata insurance. I did send an email around this time last week giving you the details for those surveys. There is a survey for owners and there is a separate survey for managers. So I'm going to ask Rochelle to pop those two survey links in, just making clear there, Rochelle, which one is which. Nicole always does very, very valuable, very impactful research in our space, and you can guarantee it. What she comes up with from gathering this information, the recommendations that she puts out there are going to be game-changing. We've certainly seen that with the building defects research that Dr. Nicole Johnston has done. So get involved in those surveys if you haven't already. Another survey that has cropped up within the last couple of weeks is the survey in relation to the New South Wales Strata Hub. What we were calling this time last year the Strata portal is now being called the Strata Hub because it's become bigger than I think Minister Dominello ever imagined and ever hoped for. The Strata Hub is going to be the go-to place, the public information forum for accessing information about our strata schemes. We're going to be able to look up an address and find out who the strata manager is. Do they have a strata manager? What are their contact details? Who the building manager is? Even contact details for committee members. Understanding some basic information about our strata schemes, having that publicly available. This is now becoming a place for all kinds of information about buildings, building structures, information that will assist our building commissioner in New South Wales. There is a survey for what you think about all this and more information about the Strata Hub, what it's going to involve, what kind of information it's going to give us access to. And there is a website for you to go to and check that out. We're going to pop that here in the comments. If you are over on LinkedIn, you are probably not getting the comments as Rochelle posts them in. The software that we use here doesn't post the comments to LinkedIn, but please do pop me a note. Let me know that you'd like that link, and I will head back over to my LinkedIn profile after today's chat and make sure that you have the links that you need. So having your say on the New South Wales Strata Hub, I think the date on that is the 19th of March, which is not that far away, next week. Make sure you go check that out. The review of our New South Wales legislation, there was an extension for your submissions on the discussion paper. That extension has taken us out to the 7th of April. So you do still have some more time to have your say on the New South Wales Strata Law reviews. And there's another survey there for you if you go and check that out. I haven't got a link here for you today, but if you want that, pop me a note and I'll give it to you. Survey about pets. So let's do it. Let's talk about pets, baby. We do have a new pets case in New South Wales. And there's been a bit of media about this. This is Jimmy. Jimmy, the cute little mini fox terrier. Jimmy wants to become a resident in City Quarter. And Jimmy has been told first by the Owners Corporation and the strata manager, and then by the tribunal, that he's not allowed. Not allowed to take up residence in City Quarter. The owners of Jimmy brought their application to the tribunal, challenging what they characterised as a ban on pets in their Owners Corporation, and argued that the Cooper case from our Court of Appeal last year meant that that ban was invalid and therefore of no effect, and they should be able to keep Jimmy. The tribunal disagreed, and what we've been reading in the media and in some of the forums that I'm part of is that that decision is surprising, that that decision is wrong, that that decision shouldn't have been made and is causing some confusion now in New South Wales. I had a read of the decision, and in my opinion, the decision is not wrong. The tribunal member was actually quite relieved. I read a sigh of relief, I think, in the reasons, because the tribunal member found it out. The tribunal member didn't actually have to make a decision on this particular application because the tribunal member found that it was made under the wrong section. So Jimmy's owners made an application under section 157. That is a section where you can apply to the tribunal for an order that the owner's corporation has unreasonably refused your application to keep a pet. You can only make that application if your owner's corporation has a bylaw that says pets are allowed with approval, and approval must not be unreasonably withheld. That's not the bylaw that was and is in place in City Quarter. They have what is almost a ban. They allow cats, they allow goldfish, I think. They allow small dogs in the terraces, but not in the apartments. So not a complete ban. But they certainly don't have a bylaw that says pets are allowed with approval and approval must not be unreasonably withheld. If you have a bylaw like that and approval is unreasonably withheld, you apply to the tribunal for an order under section 157. So the owner's corporation in this case said that the application was misguided because it was made, or misconceived is the word, because it was made under the wrong section. The tribunal, as I said, with some relief, I think, agreed with that and said, I don't have to determine the question because the application's made under the wrong section. Also important to note in this case is that the bylaw in question was a bylaw in a community management statement, a CMS. It was the Community Association's bylaw that was being challenged, as I understand it, not what the owner's corporation had in their bylaws. And the tribunal member said the community association is not even a respondent to this application, and it probably should have been. So challenging the bylaws in a community management statement, the community association must be part of those proceedings. The community association wasn't in this case. And bear in mind, if you've been on any one of my bylaw webinars before, one of the things that I point out is if you have conflicting bylaws, conflicting positions that a community association takes and then its subsidiary owners corporation takes, and pets can be one of those areas for conflict, the community association's bylaw prevails, the CMS prevails. Our legislation in New South Wales says that. So if you're going to challenge a CMS bylaw, make sure you join the community association to the proceedings. And the final thing I'll say about this is, if you get all that right and you've joined the community association, you're making the right application. If you're attempting to argue that the community association's bylaw is harsh, unconscionable or oppressive, which was the argument in Cooper, you might have a bit of trouble because we don't actually have that provision in our community association's legislation yet. It is proposed in the Community Land Management Bill of 2020, and unless I've missed it, that is still a bill. The Act hasn't been made yet. I think it's waiting to go back for its second reading speech. We don't yet have a rule that community associations can't have harsh, unconscionable or oppressive bylaws. So I think it's going to be hard to challenge a community association's pet ban if you have one, even if you do go down the right path, make the right application and join the right people. That legislation is set to change to bring it in line with the Strata Schemes Management Act and have that same provision about harsh, unconscionable or oppressive bylaws, which I think is a good thing, but we don't have that yet for our community associations. So those of you who are wondering what's going on with the tribunal, why have we had this decision about Jimmy the Foxy? I hope that provides some clarity for you. And I'm just seeing Gary post here in the comments on Facebook. I'll bring it up on the screen. That's why owners need to seek professional advice. Yes, I agree with that, Gary. And of course, that comes with some bias, being a strata lawyer myself, but it's really hard. This legislation is complex. It is constantly changing. I've just talked about Community Land Management Act, CMS, strata bylaws, bills to amend legislation, harsh, unconscionable or oppressive bylaws, Court of Appeal decision in Cooper. I don't know how any self-represented owner, and the owners in this case were self-represented, I believe both sides were self-represented, how they're supposed to get a handle on this. And our tribunal tells us that this is a place that is consumer friendly. We don't allow lawyers without leave. And then no wonder applicants struggle to express exactly what it is that they want the tribunal to do. Perhaps if the application was framed differently, it would have been a different result. And Bill and Ben is saying, or know how the game is played. Yes, perhaps. But that is my short summary there of Jimmy's case. And I will put a link, or Rochelle, hopefully, if you have one there, Rochelle. I lose track sometimes of how prepared I've been. If you have a link there, Rochelle, please pop that link into the comments. I will also read to you, yes, I do have it here, the case name. I'll call it Jimmy's case. It is McGregor and the owners of Strata Plan 74896. Decision came down on the 1st of March. We have a link to those reasons for you. Have a read. Let me know if you agree with my characterization of why the tribunal decided it the way they did. I think it was the right decision. Bill and Ben is saying, indeed, that is what I saw technically. It was the wrong application. Yep. Okay, so lots of you tuning in. Are you here ready and waiting for our special guest? This is a hot topic, at least it's a hot topic for me. Did you see my email earlier today? I have a personal vested interest in learning some more about embedded networks, and that is indeed what our guest is here today to share. I just want to acknowledge some more of you coming on in. I've said hello to you, Sean. I think I have. Hello. Melissa is joining us from the Central Coast. Nice to see you. And scrolling down. Excellent. Okay. Start a, oh, Jen, I'm bringing up your comment. Jen, start a Jimmy GoFundMe page. Yeah. Perhaps. All right. I'm going to introduce you all to our special guest. His name is Joseph Arena. Joseph is the managing director and the owner of Arena Energy Consulting. He has over 21 years of experience in the Australian energy sector. His expertise covering energy consulting and advisory services, energy procurement, energy retailing, network distribution, smart metering, retail and residential embedded networks, and his clients have included commercial, industrial, government, property, and strata. Joseph is recently appointed as a council member of the Energy Charter's National Customer Code for Energy Brokers, Consultants, and Retailing. Arena Energy's key philosophy and mission is to help their clients navigate the complexities of the energy sector, and they focus on consulting, advisory, and educational services. It sounds like the man that we need right here, right now, Joseph Arena. Welcome to Friday Live.
I was smiling at the lovely warm welcome. Thank you for that. and thank you for the opportunity to chat with everybody today. It's great.
You're most welcome to be here, and I can tell by how many people are tuning in live how interested they are to hear more from you. We get lots and lots of visitors to our replay, so hello to those visitors who are watching the replay, but lots of people here live to learn more about embedded networks. So Joseph, take it away. What exactly is an embedded network?
Okay, so I'll jump straight into this. The Australian Energy Regulator's definition, but I don't think I'll go down that path. That's a little bit more technical and complex. So basically, it's an aggregation of all the energy that's used in a particular building, and a building like a residential apartment block or a retirement village or a shopping centre, something like that. So the power is aggregated to a central point, which is known as the parent meter. Then the energy is on-sold to the residents, the residential building, downstream of that. So all the residential apartments are all metered as well. And that's, in a nutshell, what an embedded network is. It's a private electricity network. It's not like the electricity distributors network. So that's it. Okay, so now thank you for that.
See ya. Now, these are networks that, as I understood it, are these days in new buildings often put in place by a developer. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So in the different, you mentioned all the strata laws before, you know, how complex it is. Exactly the same in the energy industry as well. It's very, very complex, and different state jurisdictions have different rules and regulations as well, not only from a strata perspective, but also from an energy perspective as well. So in Victoria, for example, embedded networks have been around, 15 plus years in the current sort of style they are now. But if you even consider the most fundamental aspect of an embedded network, like a caravan park, it's when we were kids, going out to caravan parks, you're putting electricity either in a meter, or you might pay for it included or not included. Those sort of scenarios are embedded networks as well. But just to go a little tiny bit technical for a second, in 2013, the Australian Energy Regulator published some new guidelines, and it's a framework. It's called the National Energy Customer Framework, that basically created a bit of crystallization about the rules and regulations about embedded networks. So from that point, especially New South Wales, it has exponentially increased the number of embedded networks that are now created. They are generally found in larger buildings, 50 lots and above. When I first started in the embedded network space, we were looking at really 100 lots and above, but it's that number's sort of come down now, especially once people are now starting to aggregate centralized hot water as well, which in theory is not an embedded network, because that's a definition under the rules and the regulations, but it's sort of an embedded network in that same sort of sense. So that was a long answer to your question. Yes, it's in a lot of buildings now.
And why would a developer of a larger building decide to put in place an embedded network and not do it the old way, normal way?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Lots of reasons. So one of the fundamental reasons is it makes the whole setup easier. So if you think you've got a building with 100 lots in it, there'd be 100 electricity meters that need to be installed. There'd be one area for the common property as well. So that developer, or the builder of the developer, would have to have effectively 101 relationships with a local energy distributor. So Sydney metropolitan area, it's Ausgrid, for example. So it's 100 relationships, it's 100 meters, it's 100 electricity accounts that need to be set up. It's 100, truck visits, etc. So when it's an embedded network, as I mentioned, it's aggregated to the central point, that parent meter. So it's only one connection point to the grid. So that relationship that needs to be established with the electricity network is one, not 101. And of course, when you have an embedded network manager involved as well, they'll help the developer to do that sort of setup. So that's one of the first fundamental reasons why. So I can see about to ask another question. There's many more reasons as well, but I'll stop at that for a second and take a breath. So.
Well, that makes absolute sense to me. It is cheaper for the developer, I suppose, is the short story, to have one of these embedded networks in place, and perhaps it costs them nothing if they have somebody, a consultant, I'm not sure the word that you used, they're helping them set this up.
Yeah. So it saves them a lot of money, but also in many cases, the embedded network operator or the manager will also contribute funds towards the site. In centralized hot water, they're actually paying for the hot water plant. There's a few different models, but there's a model where they'll pay for that hot water plant, the hot water meters, etc., which would traditionally have been paid for by the developer. The introduction of solar into a building, or perhaps electric vehicle infrastructure charging, those sort of assets can be funded by the embedded network operator as well. And there have been some practices in the past where money might have changed hands for managing the embedded network, or at least in New South Wales, obviously you have to have the first AGM for the formal engagement. The Australian Energy Regulator has come down on that. In 2018, they put forward some rules around payments to developers. So it's a sort of very controversial topic to start going down that rabbit hole now.
Hey, that's what we do here, Joseph.
Well, there you go. So we have people responding to that, the polarized responses from developers and embedded network operators on one end up through to the other. But it's not all bad news. I mean, I've dealt with plenty of developers in the past, and they want as many benefits as possible to go to the occupants of the building. So whether that's the owner's corporation entity itself or the residents within the building, it's really, a lot of it's got to do with the mindset of the developer at the beginning.
I do want to get into that. You've mentioned there, though, the first AGM, and I just want to get an idea of how it plays out when we have, you say we're a new owner, maybe we've bought off the plan, the plans come off now and we've settled, we're the proud owners of a new apartment building. There is an embedded network in this building. We're going to the first AGM. What's happening at the first AGM in relation to the embedded network?
Sure. Okay, no, that's great. I'll give you two different scenarios. So let's go to Victoria first. So in Victoria at the IGM, the inaugural general meeting, the developer would sign a 10-year contract with the embedded network manager, traditionally, that's been happening in the past. Then at the first AGM, that agreement is then novated across to the owners corporation. So they rock up, there's like 9.5 years or whatever left on this 10-year agreement, and it is what it is, full stop. So in New South Wales, the dynamics are slightly different. Of course, no agreements can be entered into prior to the first AGM for longevity. So you'll have a scenario where the embedded network operator might attend the first AGM. They're presenting their agreements to the owners corporation, or to the occupants there, obviously the soon to be formed owners corporation. They have a 30 or 40 or 50 or 70 page document that they're going through with 25 different motions or 40 different motions. So it's 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. They come up to motion number 28, electricity embedded network, and then they go through the motions, vote yes, no. So these are the scenarios that are occurring, and certainly raises a level of anxiety for some customers if they don't understand what's going on. So we mentioned before about seeking advice, that fellow Ben or whoever that was, who mentioned about, someone mentioned about getting external advice. Self-serving, of course, that's what I do. But if people are concerned about it, or they don't know anything about it at all, it's an opportunity to actually take a breath and stop. There's been scenarios where the document gets passed, the motion gets passed, bang, it happens. It's in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. A management agreement's put in place. There's been scenarios where the motion hasn't been passed, and you know what? The power wasn't cut off, at 9 a.m. this morning. It's not set and forget by any means, because there's, again, go down a whole other rabbit hole here. There's lots of obligations in relation to the Australian Energy Regulator for the owners corporation as well, given they actually own the embedded network. Let's talk about that topic for a second. Many embedded network operators will position it that we own this embedded network, but who owns the electrical infrastructure in a building apart from the meters? The owners corporation own the like less electricity reticulation. They own the meter panels. They own the main distribution board. They own all the infrastructure that's in the building except for the electricity meters. It's generally owned by the embedded network operator. So under the Australian Energy Regulator's rules and guidelines and framework, whoever physically distributes electrons around a building owns the embedded network, i.e. the owners corporation. Unless there's like weird scenarios where the embedded network operator might have taken a lease on the infrastructure, something like that, that gets into a very complex situation, but certainly an anomaly, not the standard. So there's requirements for the OC to register with the AER. There's requirements for the owners corporation to join the ombudsman schemes. Certainly New South Wales and Victoria, that's the case. Queensland, it's work in progress still, even though they will get there eventually. That's still work in progress. So again, different rules in different states. So there's a lot of obligations for the owners corporation to enter that they're accepting by accepting the embedded network. And so they
Tell me this, Joseph, if we go to the first AGM, and I actually received an email after I announced you were coming on the show from, I believe it was a Strata manager who said they had a building that went to a first AGM and said, no, we don't want to sign this contract to continue with the embedded network operator. Is it the case then that someone's got to go in and install separate electricity meters for each lot and put a whole new system in? I mean, that sounds like a huge task after the building's been completed.
Indeed, it's a task. I wouldn't call it specifically a huge task. It's certainly a lot of things to organise. So I guess in that scenario, there's multiple options that owners corporation would have. Either go back to the table with that embedded network operator and negotiate a better outcome. If they're not happy with what was presented, and frankly, I've seen in some agreements that are 10, 15, 20-year agreements, it's just, I'm sorry, it's a personal opinion, it's just outrageous, and you can't have that scenario. So either renegotiate a better outcome, or if you can't get to that point, you don't engage that operator, you find an alternative embedded network operator. And there will be the scenario where there may be some meters that would need to be replaced, or perhaps the new embedded network operator might procure them. And you're starting getting to a really probably awkward situation with the developer at this point, because there was no formal engagement at the first AGM. So therefore, the owners corporation doesn't really have an obligation to the embedded network operator, their liabilities or obligations would sit between the two original parties, the developer and the embedded network operator. So it becomes a bit of not even a commercial or a strata discussion, not a commercial discussion, it becomes a legal discussion as well, perhaps around strata rules too. Certainly going on the edge of my knowledge of the strata law, so that's where you come in there for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why most buildings, especially when you're at motion 36 at a first AGM and it is 9:30 p.m. and you haven't had dinner yet, most buildings say, oh yeah, that's fine. As long as I have electricity, as long as my lights are on, I'm happy. Tell me about that, the practicalities of having an embedded network operator. Does that mean there is no choice for occupiers when they are running their electricity?
Yeah, fantastic question, because the answer is it's a yes and no question at the same time, and both answers are 100% right. So let me talk about the yes side of it first. So again, I often refer back to the rules and regulations because it is a rules driven environment, electricity infrastructure and utility services. So you have to refer back to that. I try not to make that too boring and too fundamental, but it does live in that sort of territory. So I've lost the track of the question.
Can I choose my energy?
Oh, sorry, thank you. You're talking too much. That's good. Yeah. So yes, you can. Yes, you can. So in shopping centres where there are embedded networks, often 20 or 30% of the tenants successfully engage their own retailer of choice and they transfer out. There's no problem. So it's a happening thing. It works in the market. There's a whole back end of market administration stuff that needs to occur. In many of those scenarios, the shop owner or the who's running their business there will have two energy bills, one from the electricity retailer of choice. That's the electricity, some renewable charges, which are compulsory, maybe metering, those sort of charges. And the shopping centre owner has a right to charge the customers for the physical distribution charges associated with their energy supply. It's roughly, 50-50, 60-40, sort of depends, in that sort of range. So it happens in the market. So there's the yes answer to the question. So regarding residential customers, so the answer is also yes, they absolutely can do it. But the no part of that answer is it's so difficult to find an electricity retailer that's actually prepared to make an offer to this customer. So you're talking in shops, the customers might be, 20, 30, 40,000 upwards, kilowatt hours per annum. Even 50,000 is still a very small load in the energy market. So, but it's still larger than a residential customer, which might be, 2, 3, or 4,000, kilowatt hours per annum. So the energy retailer's margin associated with a small customer is so small, and all their automated market interfacing systems are all set up for mass market, where it's all B2B transactions, business to business transactions, and it's all automated. So as soon as they step sort of 1 degree left of center, it just makes it very difficult for them. And frankly, when I started my own business last year and, working out my focus on what I was going to be doing, I thought, embedded networks, I'm an expert in that space. There's not many of us that are independent. So I rang around to all the retailers and said, would you make an offer to residential customers? And pretty much everybody said no. And wow. So while in theory, yes, customers certainly can transfer out residential, and it has happened. There might be the odd one here and there who's pursued it with perhaps not a non-mainstream type energy retailer that was prepared to go to all that extra effort to make it all happen. It's just really difficult, pushing water uphill, I suppose would be a question. Yeah, but the market allows that. The market does allow it in theory. I'll let you answer.
I'm just going to flip over to some of the comments here. There's a lot of them. And I think Brent Clark from What Block is here. Hey, Brent. And he's kicking off that discussion about the positives, I think is how I read Brent's comment. I'm going to show it on the screen at risk of us disappearing behind it. And gosh, I'm on my laptop today and look at this. I'm showing my age. I'm trying to read what this says. Sometimes embedded network providers will provide the developer with hot water plant, centralized tempering valve system to make sure residents don't scald themselves from the hot water, ultraviolet system to ensure water is cleaned on a reticulation loop, no Legionnaires, solar system, EV charging, in addition to all the electricity and hot water meters for zero cost to the developer. Yes, much cheaper. And I suppose positive indeed, but is the developer passing on that saving when they're selling their apartments? Did you want to speak a little bit more, Joseph, about the building that's agreed we're going to continue with the embedded network? We accept it's incredibly difficult to change, so we are here taking what we're given, what we're told to take. Is this a good deal? Are we getting electricity cheaper as residents when we're on an embedded network?
Yeah, so that's great. Just to jump back to Brett for a sec, I know Brent. We've known each other for many years. So, hi Brent, how are you going? Thank you for the comment. And just to talk to that, yes, if you do have a centralized hot water plan and the embedded network manager is managing that scenario is called service hot water. Yeah, that in theory is a great outcome for the residents. Without any doubt, they can reduce their levies for that. It's important to know what hot water tariffs they're being charged, etc. as well, because with hot water in particular, there's no choice at all. There's no market rules allow any customer to procure their hot water services from anybody except the embedded network manager, embedded network operator. Yeah, so we can have another debate later on, Brent, about that if you want to. But yeah, there's good and bad, and I'll talk about solar and other examples too down the track. But yeah, so it's good. So is it a good deal or not? Maybe that's a good segue into other things. So I've seen scenarios, fantastic scenarios, where the owners corporation's common area energy needs are being sold at below market, 10, 15, 20% below what they would have been able to get if they were a market customer. So tick, that's fantastic. I've seen scenarios where the residential customers are also getting, is it the best market price at that minute? Maybe, maybe not, because there's always, different offers going out every day. Every retailer will do a new offer. But I've seen them where, it can be 15, 20%, below whatever the default market offer is, or in Victorian default offer, below those market prices. So that's, again, a fantastic scenario. If you've got the embedded network operator who have invested in solar or electric vehicle charging infrastructure, as Brent also mentioned as well, and that solar was paid for by the embedded network operator, that solar is being fed directly into the common area load for the building. So effectively, the embedded network, the owners corporation are reaping 100% of the benefit of that solar. Tick, fantastic outcome as well. So of course, there are those sort of scenarios where there are fantastic outcomes for those people. But converse to that, putting aside cost of assets, because it also comes down to individual people as well, not the entity, not just the owners corporation. I've seen scenarios where people's prices, it's barely, a discount from market prices. It is gouging. It absolutely is. People are being taken advantage of because they don't have an opportunity to really go to market. There are some market rule changes happening. I'm very happy to talk about that in a minute. I've seen scenarios where the owners corporation, at least I reviewed probably 70 or 80 embedded network contracts last year, and at least 50% of them, the owners corporation with at least between 20 to 50% overcharged what they would have been if they were a market customer. And historically, embedded networks have been seen as a bit of a black box. People go, it's embedded network. Okay, I can't do anything about it. Well, my objective is purely to educate people. I want to educate and advise people. This is how it works. Then you make whatever decision you want. You want to pursue something? Great. If you don't care about electricity, it's just electricity. Don't care. Great. Whatever the outcome is, it's up to each individual. But people need to understand what their options are and what their rights are.
And what would you say to an owner who is a resident in a building, whether they're an owner-occupier or they're a tenant, and there's an embedded network and they want to find out where they sit, whether they're in that 50% that you think there's some gouging going on, or whether they're on the other side where, it's pretty much market or it's even better. Do they go to their Strata manager to start that conversation? If they're a committee member, where do they go to? How do they start getting educated?
Yeah, okay. So lots of options out there. So certainly the ombudsman in each jurisdiction would be happy to talk to people. That's why I touched on very early that the owners corporation needs to be a member. They need to join the ombudsman scheme. Otherwise, if you're not a member of the ombudsman scheme, and theoretically the ombudsman has no obligation to talk to that customer. That's why some of the rules were changed. So that's certainly one starting point. I would go back to the embedded network operator as well. I'm not happy with these tariffs. I've been on the energymadeeasy.com government website. I can get a tariff that's 10% cheaper than what I'm on at the moment. I want you to match that. And then that's certainly a scenario there. Absolutely could go back to the strata manager to ask them to undertake some sort of review, whether they think that the common area rates are reasonable or not. The strata manager may have knowledge about that. Or I guess finally, which is again self-serving, but that's what I do. I review embedded network contracts. That's part of my business, and I just finished one last week for a site up in I won't say the suburb, Central Coast up there, and the owners corporation were being ripped off X number of dollars per annum. Ripped off. It's a very strong expression, but they were, and they had no idea what was going on. The strata manager may or may not have known as well. Again, it's a bit of historically, there's a bit of legacy angst about embedded networks. It's a black box. No one knows about it. So it's an embedded network. It is what it is. But it's not. It's not. It is what it is. People can actually do something about it.
Yes, and that is a very important message for people to take away. I'm heading back to the comments, and we have a comment here from Patrick, who is coming to us from LinkedIn. And you spoke earlier, Joseph, about these 10-year contracts that are permitted in Victoria, and Patrick saying new Victorian legislation is close to being formalised, if not already in play, for a maximum 3 years for the initial term to provide more protections for owners from being locked into poor contracts. Excellent. Good to see that happening there in Victoria.
And I know Patrick as well. Hi, Patrick. All the professionals.
And Savia is asking, does it mean that only the owners corporation can change energy retailers in the embedded network? What about residents? That's a good point, and you've kind of answered part of that with the residents, yes, having the option to change. But my understanding is with an embedded network, the owners corporation as an entity, do they have any say in who the operator is?
Absolutely. So the owners corporation has two relationships with the embedded network operator. One is for the management of the whole site as a management contract. The second one is supplying energy to the common area load, the common area energy needs, which is like an electricity supply agreement versus the management contract for the whole site. So in those scenarios, the common area load for the embedded networks is generally a large supply point, especially for larger buildings. And in the energy market would sort of classify those customers generally as what we call C&I, so commercial, industrial, large market customers. So they would be a similar analogy to the ones in the shopping centre. Very easy for the common area load to transfer out to another supplier if you don't feel that the embedded network operator is doing a good deal for you. That's sort of stuff that I can certainly get involved in as well. So it's just basic energy tendering.
Now that leads me to my other question, Joseph, that I flagged for today in our email this afternoon, and perhaps related to embedded networks, but sometimes not. I have been contacted by a couple of people now, and I always say, contacted once, noted, contacted 2 or 3 times, my ears start to prick up and I start talking about it on the podcast or here on these Friday Lives. I understand that strata managers are signing up their buildings to what I'm going to call energy contracts or utility supply contracts in bulk in order to get what they say is a good deal for the building. Is that this kind of arrangement that you're talking about here, where there is some market sway because of the size of a building or a group of buildings, and then buildings are going to get a better deal when they sign up in bulk through their strata manager?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the strata management firms would certainly aggregate their total portfolio of common area loads. So this is not for the parent meter I spoke about from Embedded Networks. It's for the common area, like the property, whether it's an embedded network or a non-embedded network, that would be the same thing can occur. So yeah, so again, a little bit market definitions of technical data. So smaller buildings, like might call them walk-ups. I think that's the expression in Strata. Like buildings like 2 or 3 stories, might be 10 or 15 or 20 lots in there. Their electricity load would be pretty basic, most likely no lift or no air conditioning or not a lot of common power being drawn. So their energy load is relatively small. So in the market, they're called SME, like SME sites, small medium enterprise sites. Yeah. So and then the larger ones would be C&I. So you aggregate those 2 lots of sites within the strata manager's portfolio, which might be hundreds and hundreds of sites, depending on how big the firm is. And yeah, they would go to market in bulk to get a bulk deal from an energy retailer. Absolutely.
Now, the question that was put to me recently by an owner who reached out on email, there's an acknowledgement there that the bulk deal may be a better deal. We're getting a discount. It's not the discount so much that is the concern, of course. It's the process being used by the strata management company to enter their client into what is effectively a contract, and maybe a contract for a period of time. And the question was put to me as, what are the legal obligations, responsibilities of the strata manager? Can they do this without us, the strata building, the body corporate, the owners corporation, the committee, telling them to do it or consenting to them doing it? And the example that was put to me was, the strata manager simply said, this is an opt-out process. I sent you an email letting you know this was happening. You didn't opt out, and so now you're signed up to this 3-year contract. And as a committee member saying, well, hang on, of course I didn't look at it. It looked like some garbage about energy, electricity, went over my head, wasn't paying attention. Can a strata manager sign us up to that contract? Do they have that authority? Now, I don't expect you to answer that question, Joseph. That is a legal question, and my very general answer is, well, have a look at the terms of your agency agreement and what your strata manager is and isn't authorised to do. I'm seeing some comments here. If you don't mind, Joseph, I'll just quickly flip over to the comments on this exact point, and because we have some helpful insights here from strata managers and owners. Gary is saying bulk buying via the strata management company has been commercially beneficial in our experience. That's good to know. Sean, who I know is a strata manager, we provide this service with full transparency to the strata committee to advise with an opt-out if they wish. There you go. Thank you, Sean. You might have posted that before I mentioned it. I'd be very interested to know how you say that sits with your agency agreement. You're not getting express instructions there to do something. I'm not saying right or wrong. I haven't looked into it, but I am getting some contact from concerned owners who are saying we didn't even realise that this was happening. Gary's making a comment there. Of course, the committee needs to explicitly agree. Question mark. Joseph, have you any thoughts on this process with bulk buying? Yep.
It's very interesting. And I think it comes down to what you said before in relation to the management agreement that particular strata firm has with that owners corporation. Because certainly from an energy market perspective, for a contract to be entered into, and in particular also if it facilitates the transfer from one electricity retailer to another, explicit informed consent, and with capital letters, EIC, is a market terminology, which obviously it's obvious what it means, but it's a market terminology thing as well, is required to be executed in order to facilitate the contract itself and then any transfers needed. So I would assume then that the electricity details of how that's being managed by the strata firm would be expressed in that strata management agreement, and the owners corporations have given them authority to act on their behalf to execute an agreement, a multi-site agreement. So yeah, I would assume so. I guess as long as that box is ticked, somewhere along the line, then governance is covered. Whether that owners corporation committee member read the email or not, it's obviously a question as well. But look, I've been in the sector for over 20 years, and I live in a residential building, and I know our strata management firm facilitates that, but I don't even know who the energy supplier is to my building. So, but again, mine's a small building.
You're like the lawyer who never reads a contract and it's put in front of him and signs it. That's what we all do.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, but my building's tiny, and I'm sure my power bill's 2 for nothing, so I haven't spent time on it. So,
yes, good. Now, I do want to make sure, Joseph, that our viewers and those who are watching on the replay know about a webinar that you are a special guest on. The webinar is being run by the Owners Corporation Network, the OCN, and we will pop a link here in our comments section for people to go and register for that free webinar, also supported by the City of Sydney, which is how you came to my attention, Joseph, chatting to Megan Chatterton at the City of Sydney. I think it's excellent that you're doing this education for owners. Will you be covering some of this stuff in the webinar and maybe some other things we haven't had a chance to get to?
Absolutely, yeah, and in a bit more detail as well, especially about some of the rules and regulations that are being addressed to create more transparency within embedded networks. And the regulators have acknowledged, they realise it's a bit clunky and cumbersome at the moment. So these new rules and regulations that are being proposed, I'll touch on all those in the webinar.
Perfect. Very good to know. And I know you and I have discussed a podcast episode as well to dig a little deeper on these issues. I think for me, the key takeaway is simply being aware. That's Louis chewing his bone there on my nice hard floors. So, oh, he's brought it over to the rug now. Good boy. Being aware that you have an embedded network, what it means, and then what your options are to find out more. I think where to go to find out more. It's not necessarily a cause for concern or a bad thing. There can be lots of positives that have come from having this in place in your building, and a lot of other resources that have been set up earlier on in the development that the developer's been able to put in place that have helped you because they have these arrangements. But
I'm sort of not advocating that people must churn automatically just because it is what it is. Like, you understand first, just again, self-serving, I can't help it. This is what I do though. It's the nature of my business. Just review it and do a health check on the rates, on the agreements. Make sure you're comfortable and happy with it. You might be on the best deal, best thing since sliced bread. Bang, great, happy. Let's just sit here and enjoy the benefits we're getting rather than being and not knowing about it. So sorry to jump in.
No, go for it. I do want to make sure, Joseph, you let our listeners know where they can get in touch with you. Not self-serving at all. That's why you're here. We need to know who the go-tos are when we have these questions. Website, email address.
Yeah, so just jump onto my website. It's www.arenaenergyconsulting.com.au. So I've got all my contact details in there. So just jump onto my website, Arena Energy Consulting.
Perfect. We will pop that in the comments here as well. Excellent. Now, so many people here watching live and watching the replay back. If you believe this information is going to be helpful to your neighbours, to your committee, to your strata manager, please do hit that share button and share it with them. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a little love heart. I can see I think I've got a couple of love hearts there today. If you've liked what we've had to say, that helps Facebook send this out to all those important places. The more people who understand this crazy world that is Strata, or at least know where to go to gain more of an understanding, helps everybody. Thank you, everyone, for your comments here today. I am seeing a few more coming. Greg is saying, looking forward to seeing Joseph's webinar too. Great work by you both. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
And thank you so much, Joseph. I'm going to let you go out to your Friday evening and your weekend, and I am going to wrangle this little puppy who is wandering around, wondering when he's going to get his next treat.
Well, thank you again, Amanda. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. They were great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.